Welcome back to the Buddhist Millionaire Podcast. I am Matt Jardine, your host and author of How to Be a Buddhist Millionaire, 9 Practical Steps to Being Happy in a Materialist World. Have you read it yet? I'm going to keep going on until you've read it. Well, if not, it's available in all good bookstores and, online, the usual suspects. A little bit of housekeeping before we get going. As you know, this podcast is powered by coffee and very little else. Certainly not talent on my side. So if you like what you hear, please go ahead and buy me a coffee at my Buy Me a Coffee page. The link is in the description below. All right, what's been happening since the last show? Quite a bit. I finished draft 2 of my new book. Quite happy with that. There was kind of structure change. There wasn't too much to fix, which is a good thing. And I tell you why. The pantsers will not want to hear this. But it's because I planned this one pretty well. Okay, that'll upset half my audience. Anyway, we'll clean it further through drafts and 3. Then it will go to essentially the 2 most ferocious women in my life, editor and agent. By the time they've got it, they'll no doubt set fire to some hoops to make me jump through before it goes elsewhere. All right, what else? Actually, this is exciting. With this episode, we'll be launching a featured friends section from this one, then everyone after. For those who've read, who follow the cast and who've read the book, you'll know that I'm a huge supporter of small business and basically anyone who's kind of trying to do a work life filled with passion and trying to make a success of it. So we'll start with this one, then and every other one we'll give someone a shout out, a small business or someone a shout out, and hopefully that gives them a little bit of a platform. So we'll do that kind of halfway through the show. Stay tuned. All right, here we go then. Speaking of books and business, that brings me on to today's very special guest. He's a major figure in British publishing, CEO of Hachette UK, the UK's second largest trade and educational publisher. He's also president of the executive board, was vice president, but now president. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, that on Wiki, it was vice, but he's president of the executive board of the Publishers Association. Now, those things are all very impressive. Great. But that's actually not why I asked him on today. The real reason is that whether he knows it or not, he's a perfect example of a Buddhist millionaire in that he is doing work that he loves and making a real success of it. And also, from my perspective at least, he's putting care and compassion back into the corporate workspace, which is no mean feat. And I want to touch on that a little bit. So please welcome my guest, the ever-inspiring Mr. David Shelley. Good morning.
Good morning, Matt. That's such a lovely introduction. I really don't feel worthy. So that was very nice.
True. All true. Let me just add some context to the listener, and then they'll know while we're here, right? I'm going to speak about this email. So you guys listening, right? This is why. This is what happened. So very quickly, How to Buddhist Millionaire was published by Short Books, which is now part of Hachette. Fine. So at the end of 2021, what are we, 2022 now, 2021, I got a corporate email, those faceless corporate emails, which mostly you don't read. Well, I read this one and I read it, and there's, the CEO at the end, David Shelley, and I read it and I thought, actually, this is really interesting. And there's something about the way this is written that this guy, essentially, David would be my boss, I guess, one of them, really cares. And I couldn't get it off my mind. So I shot back an email to say, thanks very much. Really nice to be part of the family and for taking the time to let us know what's going on in the industry. Honestly, I did not think that email would reach anyone or anything. You don't think they really do. About a minute or so later, email back to thank me. And in my head since is someone who is clearly passionate about what they do and care. So that's how we met. And then I basically said, would you come on the podcast? So here you are. So yeah, that's how we kind of hooked up, isn't it?
It is. And yeah, I mean, from my side, it almost feels like the easiest thing to do to write an email or whatever. So yeah, I almost can't imagine not doing that, sort of not replying to someone nice who writes like you did. And
it's very rare though, in big business, it's very rare because and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but as often as business gets bigger, the people within it start to become less important. They kind of, fall under the wayside for money and stuff. And you doing that it makes a massive difference. So I thought maybe we kick off today with a little bit of a background about who you are, where you're from. Maybe we could start at your mum and dad's bookshop. That might be useful. Give us a little bit about who you are, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. I mean, I've always loved books, and part of that is, as you just said, I grew up. My parents ran a bookshop, a secondhand bookshop in a town in Sussex called Lewes. Grew up above it, always tons of books in the shop to read, and then on top of that, I remember, sort of going to the library several times a week as well to get out the maximum number of books. Sort of the whole family, we were all absolute sort of book addicts. So kind of then, rather predictably, I suppose, went on, studied English at university, really passionate about that, really passionate about fiction and poetry and, all sorts of books. And then really after university, couldn't think of wanting to do anything else apart from work with books.
Did you want to write? Did you fancy the writing side of it?
I think you'd probably struggle to find many people in publishing who didn't have some vague literary aspirations and who hadn't tried writing.
Yeah.
So yes, at various points in my life, that's been something I've sort of thought about or been interested in. I do think the one thing about when you work in publishing with amazing authors is you quickly realise your own limitations as a writer, and you realise the sort of special quality that writers bring to it. So I'm very happy as a publisher rather than a writer.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. And also here, just looking at some of you were the first in your family to go. Interesting. I just saw about university. 3 episodes back, we had Lewis Jones, who was essentially the first black belt in my martial arts school. One of the first kids. No, he was the second lad I gave a black belt to. And he was the first in his family to go to university and very, very similar. He's kind of on a similar path. He actually studied not English, but German literature. Which is like I heard some of the things he had to do, which was fairly intense. All right. So let's have a look then. Let's deal with this. Caring in my head, I've got this as caring in the corporate, right? And I love this. Daily Telegraph in 2019 said that you said, writers come first, even before business. I like that. And now, writers aside, that's quite rare to hear in the corporate workspace. Listeners, and David, maybe for you, Buddhist Millionaire, you don't have to be a Buddhist or a millionaire to be one. The Buddhist part is just a life of meaning, you know what I mean? Symbolizes meaning. And the millionaire is just you're successful. And there's often a scale. At one end is the, desperately happy but broke creative. Yes, darling, I'm doing great, not making a penny, but love it. And at the other end is the rich banker who tortures puppies for fun, and somewhere in the middle is the Buddhist millionaire stuff. Now, you're interesting. A lot of people try and move away from the corporate workspace, but here you are smack in the middle of the corporate world, essentially giving it some heart, some kind of humanity. That's the feel that I get as an author for your company. And I love that. And I want to talk to you about how you are managing to do that, how you're bringing the heart to the big workspace, which can often feel faceless.
I mean, well, it's really nice for you to say that. I think the thing I love about the publishing business is that it's where the creative meets the commercial. So it's the two things, and the way they intersect is the thing that really energizes me and really interests me.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that as I said, I came into it as a lover of books. And what I came to absolutely realize about myself and love about the business is I love it when a book sells lots of copies. I love reaching lots of readers with something. I love it when something explodes into a huge success, which of course makes money for the company and fuels the business. In my mind, there is no business. It doesn't exist without writers and books, and writers and books don't exist or wouldn't come to us if we're in an environment that is cold or corporate or sort of sterile in that way. It's very, very so always for me, right from almost the first day in publishing it was really clear the number one thing that we need to do is be able to nurture creativity. And I sort of see my major role here is helping creative people, whether they be authors or editors or designers or whoever, to do their best work. So creating an environment where people feel comfortable, people feel themselves, people feel whatever, because the better creative work that people do, the more readers will reach, and the better our business performance will be as well. So it's this, for me, it's always this kind of virtuous circle.
Yes.
So
it's interesting you say it, because that's what sits at the heart of Buddhist millionaireship. Loving what you do, but also it's not enough to just love it. You want it to be successful, right? No one wants to write a manuscript that sits in their drawer and you say to your mum or dad, I finished a manuscript. Well, that's cool at one level, but ultimately you want it to be read, and beyond that, you want it to be enjoyed. And that's not about glory. It's just we all love knowing that something in us can be abundant. I think I completely agree with you. I like that, where creativity meets, what did you say?
Commerce.
I love that. That's absolutely bang on. Now, listen, what about this then? Well, we see this, and in your when I've researched stuff, these little publishers that start in garages and houses, and the passion is obvious, but there's a point, a threshold, isn't there, where it's very tempting, especially when things go big and corporate, for money to take over, for when others come in who might not have been so passionate, for money to be the big driver. You know what I mean? I've been in a couple of work environments where I've seen that happen. How do you, keep those people at bay, people on the board or wherever, not your board, but in general, who might be a little bit more focused on the money? And how do you keep bringing them back to, listen, it's all about the art and the love and the passion?
It's a really good question. I mean, I would start with the guy who appointed me in my role, a very brilliant guy called Arnaud Nouri in Paris, who was the head of Hachette UK at that time. And his philosophy was really putting creative people at the heart of the business. And I think that was a very smart philosophy, because it means that the vision is that vision rather than, I don't know, a creative business can be led by a finance director. I have nothing against finance directors, and there are some very brilliant finance directors. But in my view, sort of someone who really gets writers and gets the creative side can hopefully make sure that that's the guiding force. My philosophy, I guess, is that if you create the right atmosphere where creative people can do their best work, then the money follows. So I mean, which is maybe not a very business-like way to look at things. I can obviously, I obviously know my way around a balance sheet. I know the numbers very well, but I think we will always produce the best results if we foster creativity, and then that just drives the business performance. If you start with saying, we need to achieve this, how many writers do we need to publish in order to do that? What do we need to do? That, to my mind, I've seen that happen in our industry, and I don't think it works very well. What tends to work is creating this environment, almost like this club type thing, that people feel able to express themselves in. And our business, the other bit of my philosophy, I suppose, is that we are a really huge business. There's about 2,000 people who work here, but actually what we are also is a collection of small businesses. So there are lots of different imprints. We have 12 different divisions of publishing, and within them there are different imprints. So your publisher, Short Books, that is a brilliant small team. As I'm sure you know them.
Love those guys down at Short Books. They're perfect.
They're great, and they do their thing, and everyone does their thing. And I and managers don't get involved in the books that Short Books want to acquire or how they want to publish them or whatever, because in my mind, we'll produce the best results if we are this federation of small publishers that share these central services,
almost a natural network, isn't it? It doesn't become run by TSA. And I knew that's why I wanted to speak to you. It's absolutely at the heart of what I feel in Buddhist Millionaire. When I first went to Short Books, I said, this book actually only needs to be about a page long, which will not please you or anyone else. It needs, and it's just going to what you said there. It basically is follow your passion, right? with 100% commitment, and the money sticks to it. That has been my experience through life, and I speak to my wife about this. I am certainly not an exceptional human being. So but I have followed the passion, and success and money seems to stick to it. And there you are saying that. Now, I went to Shortbook as a little independent. There's talking about how, kind of that community vibe. And my career before this is I was a tennis player, and I ended up playing tennis with editors. My editor, it was brilliant. So that was fine. So then when I first found out that Shortbooks had been taken by Hachette, I was like, oh no, I hope it doesn't lose that kind of close short book for me, it's shortbooky vibe. And that's why when I got your email, I was like, oh, it really hasn't. That's amazing that in a company with 2,000 employees, like you say, it's still keeping that kind of natural network. That is no mean feat though, David. I think for you and whoever else is behind that needs credit for that, because that is not an easy thing to do. Bearing in mind, I realize there'll be people in the back pushing for a slightly more hardened, maybe not at yours, but in corporate in general, pushing for that hardened, it's all about the bottom line and the Excel and whatever it may be. It's impressive. It's very impressive.
Well, that's right. I do feel, I suppose, that creative businesses, when they do going well, have a really distinct flavor or need to, are because you've got to nurture that side. It's this sort of this really delicate ecosystem. You've got to nurture that. Otherwise, it's not like producing, I don't know, jars of Marmite or whatever. It's real people, and I think having worked with writers as well, and you as a writer, like, writers are real people with feelings. And,
that's got to be a bumper sticker. Writers are real people with feelings too.
But you are the producer. You are the people. You're not a conveyor. So like again, to take the Marmite example, like what's producing Marmite is a conveyor belt of different things. It's a technical process. Yeah. And it's the Marmite that drives the profits of the company. The Marmite in this case is created by human beings from their imaginations and their feelings and things like that. And so you can't treat those two things in the same way. So I think as a creative business in particular, and I don't know if I worked, as a Marmite creator, whether I'd feel the same way. But in this business, it's like everything has to be about the human. And not about the process, and the financials have to respect the human, if that makes sense.
Well, they have to work together. So here's the thing then, this is very interesting, and knowing that there's so much respect coming from your end, we'll call that the corporate end. I know you're much more than that, but let's call it, just for the sake of this conversation, the corporate end, down to the kind of the fluffy end. The writers have feelings too. I love that. But do you find sometimes that writers and authors and creatives actually don't pay enough attention back up the other way? They don't realize actually you have a responsibility. This is a partnership. This is not you giving me a deal. That we're in this together. We are in a relationship. You and me are in a relationship. I owe it to you to be successful, and you owe it to me to be successful. But we must meet halfway. It's not enough for an author to go, there's my book, sell it. I'm going to do nothing else. Do you find that can be a struggle for authors sometimes, or any sort of creative?
I think it's all about the relationship and the communication. I think, in my experience, I think it always goes best as a publisher if we are really open with authors about this is a partnership. You are the creative talent, but not trying to. I think some creative industries, including publishing, in the past have almost dealt with their creative talent in a sort of soft and fluffy way. No. And actually, I don't think that's right. I think, because the other thing, I'm saying writers have feelings, but also writers are business people as well. Like their writing is their business. That's their means of earning money. And I think it's really important as a publisher also to respect that and respect the writer's commercial views and to find a pathway through that. So it's not all about just saying you're amazing, your book's wonderful. It's also sometimes having a really open conversation about money, and how someone might, if someone wants to sell more books, how they could sell more books, how we can work together on that, on whatever that is, and doing particular publicity, writing particular books, whatever. But the most energizing and best conversations I've had with writers are where we just cover both. It's like, this is your the writer is a creative, but the writer is a business person. So in a sense, I mean, for you as well, I guess it's where creativity meets commerce, right?
No, absolutely. And I love both those sides. And I always wonder, maybe you do, I have no idea. But I wonder if it's often useful to have a kind of section of training inside publishing that authors could tap into, that is like a video tutorials on upping your game. Realizing this is a business as well. Start your own podcast or whatever it may be, or go to book fairs. And so they go, I hadn't really, because I do think some people, I didn't come from writing first. You see, I came from a sports background, then taught, and then had businesses. So I come and have always written. So I didn't start off like that. So then I come to it with a business head. So I expect you to expect me to make money. Does that make sense? As I expect you to, it's both ways. But I do listen to some authors, especially in the writing community, #writing community. A lot of people thinking, I've done my book. Why am I not famous? And you're going, hang on, really? Is you honestly? Whereas I think if they had a kind of little module of videos where you go, look, this is a part of your relationship, just work through. Anyway, just as a thought, it's very inspiring, I have to say. I want to speak to you about leadership as an art form, because that is, now we're getting into kind of Buddhist Millionaireship 101. You looking at here, you've been on the Progress 1000 list, London's most influential people. That's 2016. 2017 and other years, named in the Financial Times annual outstanding list of LGBT executives. You've got recognition for being a leader. And from me, I can feel that. I want to talk to you about courage. Because I'm from a community of martial artists, right, where we all throw around this word, courage and battle and all that sort of stuff and all that nonsense. And really, I find what you are doing is courageous. Having the kind of the gumption to, as you say, keep heart in a big business where people around you are trying to potentially steer it to something more regular. Where do you find your courage to do that? I mean, it's a big deal, and I'm not sure you know how big a deal that is. It's great.
I don't really. It doesn't feel like a big deal to me. I suppose one thing I've learned over the years is that I only find real satisfaction at work when I'm doing what feels intuitively right to me. And I know people are wired in different ways, and some people are more sort of intuitive. Some people like to look at facts and figures before making decisions. But for me, like, my intuition is very, very important to me, and sort of going with my gut instinct. And my gut instinct, I get more pleasure and energy when I'm going with my gut instinct. And my gut instinct, I guess, is to be, to try and do this in a human way, to do it like that. So for me, it doesn't take any courage at all. I would find it very hard to do something else. So, and I have in the past, I think, tried to sort of, metaphorically wear the suit and kind of be a certain way, or to do a certain thing. And that for me requires a lot. That takes a lot of energy from me. I don't enjoy it. I find it draining. I find it quite stressful. So whereas just being myself feels easy, like it just feels easy. It doesn't take any energy. I enjoy it. I enjoy going with the gut. I enjoy just doing my thing. So for me, that's the easy thing. I guess that's the thing I've learned over the years, and that the most powerful thing often you could do, and the most energizing thing, is just to be yourself.
But that is, I mean, that's amazing, but it's hard, right? That is easier said than done, for sure, I think, because a lot of people, one of the things they struggle with is being themselves. Have you always been that sort of intuitive person? Do you kind of have you don't have to give me details, but do you have a sort of like a spiritual background, religious background? Do you have things like, for me, I'm not an anything. I'm not an ist or anything, but if I had to turn to something, it would be a kind of Buddhist philosophy. Do you have something you've leaned on that help you kind of follow your intuition, or is it something you've always had?
Well, interestingly, Yeah, I'm not an ist at all, but I have, the last few years I've done quite a lot of meditation.
Right.
And I'm very interested. We published some great books on mindfulness, and I actually take a lot from the books that we publish here. They've enriched me a lot. There's a book called Mindfulness by Mark Williams we published a few years ago that really, really resonated with me. So I suppose I think something about the practice of that has helped me to connect
definitely
quite deeply with intuition. I don't know exactly how it works or what the neuroscience is behind it or what it is, but that I think has definitely been the sort of practice of meditation and mindfulness. And I know it sounds very poncy, but it is, I find it genuinely helpful. I think it helps me to connect with that sort of deep, mysterious intuition that I feel always somehow guides me in the right direction.
I cannot agree. Meditation has been, very quickly, listeners have heard this before. When I was 14 or so, got off a bus, got beaten up by some people from other school. Wasn't a big deal, but it essentially, my father said that kind of ended my tennis career. I wasn't quite the same. Anyway, I started carrying a knife. This is a long time ago, right? I'm 50 now. I was 14, 15. Anyway, until my brother went, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Anyway, my point there is sent me to Sogyal Rinpoche Buddhist center in Caledonian Road. And I've been meditating essentially every day since I was about 17. And I would say almost all the good things that have happened to me have come because of that. Just as you said, I'm not particularly sure how it works, but it definitely, tapping into something quiet helps you realize there's something much, much bigger. And that then inspired The Pilgrimage, my first book, which led on to this second book. Yeah, so I can really relate to that. Wow, interesting.
I mean, I think as someone obviously leading, a busy business with lots of things going on and stuff, I also find it immensely helpful in terms of, everything like being grounded, getting perspective, not sweating the small stuff, realize it, all of that, and this too shall pass, like all of that stuff. I think I would recommend it to anyone in any sort of, wouldn't you, like in any stressful situation?
After this, I'll send you a link to I used to teach meditation in schools, kind of secular meditation.
Okay.
They asked me, because I taught martial arts in lots of different schools, and they said, "Can you just give us a basic intro to meditation stripped of all the other stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, here we go." So I'll send you the link to the video if you find that helpful.
Yeah, that would be great.
Or whatever. You already know how to do it. But just to show it's a skill. It doesn't, you didn't need, you can have all the other stuff, right? You can have all the other stuff. That's cool if you want to do that. But as a simple brain skill, it's incredibly useful. And I would recommend it to everyone, busy, quiet, peaceful, writers, non-writers. I think it's absolutely essential. That's amazing. And that actually points a little bit to your, I think, because I do think they're linked, your enjoyment of poetry. I think the depths of meditation and the links of poetry and creativity, I think they come from the same place, personally.
Oh, that's interesting. I'd never considered that. But yes, I mean, there's something of the same. Yeah, you have to approach poetry in the same way, right? As meditation. I think that's a really interesting point. That's a really interesting point. I never thought of that.
And when you read great poetry, kind of Blake's and Rumi's, and I know Alan Watts was not a poet, but when you listen to his stuff, it always feels very poetic to me. You do think that has come out of a really central meditative space to have those sort of insights. That's not high street thinking, is it? That's really deep introspective thinking. Amazing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Interesting.
Inspirations. Who has inspired you through your time?
I mean, there are certain business figures. So, this guy Arno Nuri, who appointed me, he's definitely been a very big inspiration for me. A very inspirational boss. My first boss. So before I was at Hachette, I worked at a really small company called Allison and Busby. Mm-hmm. That was my first job in publishing, and I was then, due to a series of events, sort of put in charge of it early in my 20s, which was a very unusual thing. But I had a very brilliant boss, a guy called Javier Moll, who has a big media empire, really. He's Spanish, based in Spain, in Barcelona, and he taught me a lot, actually. And actually, maybe a lot of what I'm saying possibly comes from what I learned from him. He was someone who I think he did like 2 PhDs while he was running this
one of those company,
for fun, for
just because he can.
Curiosity. And I think that was an interesting, if that's your role model, is someone who has, because they love to keep on learning,
amazing,
has done 2 PhDs,
as you
for
do,
their own fun and learning whilst running this. It was sort of like, that's a really cool role model for me. So I think maybe, what I learned from him was sort of just do it in your own way. You don't have to be this particular sort of person. You don't, and he was not, a corporate person at all, but he owned and had developed an enormous corporation. So that was very inspiring. And I'm inspired. Other inspirations. I'm inspired by the books and the writers. I think it's very symbiotic.
Mm-hmm.
And coming on here, having this conversation, this is inspiring me as well. Sort of the conversations that I have with novelists, with people who write business books, who write sort of self-help books, the books that I read, like all of it, I see it as very symbiotic. All of the books we publish is, I hope, helping me to run a better company in a better way.
It's time for the Featured Friend section, the section of the show where we feature a friend. Great name, by the way, guys. Totally see what you did there.
So this episode's featured friend is my very good friend Adam Schofield and his company called Moo Juice. Now, on his LinkedIn, Moo Juice is described as a small design agency based in South London, but that doesn't kind of do any justice to what he does. He's an absolute genius content creator. He does a load of different things, but I know him particularly for making high level videos, commercials, promos, etc., that sort of stuff. So all the good videos that we've got on JK is his work. All the dodgy stuff is mine. And he's just finished actually a campaign for Queen, the band Queen. Now, they found a song, Freddie Mercury, called Face It Alone, that they'd forgotten about. They found it, and he has done the music video for it, so you can see the level of his work in that video. So Adam Schofield, Moo Juice, absolute legend. Take a little look. I'll leave a link to his Instagram page below. All right, let's get back to the show. Amazing. But how old are you? Are we the same age? I'm 40. Well, I'm going to be 50 in December. You're younger than me, isn't it?
45, yeah.
So that's sort of same
generation.
I was just trying to go through the kind of the maths in my head. Here's a thing then. Do you ever, as we all do, but do you ever doubt yourself? Do you ever second guess yourself? And what do you do with it? How does it show up for you? And what do you do with that? Because that's a big stumbling block for people when they doubt themselves and it kind of freezes them up. And what do you do about that?
It's a really good question. Like, yes, absolutely. Like, sometimes I'm sure as a lot of people are, I'm hit by this thing of like, do I really know what I'm doing? Do I really?
Am I just making it up on the spot? That's
this sort of imposter syndrome. You kind of what, and often it's triggered by one or two things. There'll be some sort of like, I don't know, we have a poor month of sales, or someone gives me some negative feedback, or something, a few people do, or whatever, or someone leaves the business, or whatever happens, and then kind of hit by this thing. In terms of what I do with that, sometimes I think I've learned to think, well, is there something, is there something in that I can learn from? Like, is there, rather than am I a complete failure who doesn't know anything, is there actually a development stretch where I could be better at something?
Fine. Yeah.
There is, it's not the kind of cataclysmic
end of the world type of stuff.
Can I actually flip it in terms of doubting myself, in terms of can I tweak this bit of how I operate that would make me more effective? I think that's part of what I try and do. And then
reframing the whole
reframe it as like,
and that's another discipline, right? Because it's really easy. I'm gonna frame that in writing terms, because I understand that it's really easy when you, for example, you've done your book, for example, it goes out, agent says no one's come back. Now you have to say, right, is that because there's something wrong with it, which is fine, in which case tell me what it is and then I will fix it, right? Which is one thing. That's the reframing. Did I drop the ball, in which case I can work from A to Z, fine. Or is it just sometimes, and this is finding that balance, is it hasn't found its place in the, sounds a bit poncy, I apologize, but in the universe yet? Because I do believe in this kind of shifting, and sometimes you just have to go, it's not found its place yet. And I think some things are just good to be left alone, but you do have to have that first conversation. Actually, did I drop the ball? Can I grow from this mistake? Did Jeff leave because of me? And if so, can I fix it? Yeah, no, that's a good point.
And not to take that too personally, like sometimes I think it's separating out the sort of valuable lesson from the sort of hurt child or whatever emotion that you're having.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I want to speak to you a little bit about, and this is all part of kind of heart business, I refer to it as, about changing the story. I like this. There's a couple of things I saw here. Hachette donates 20K to Black Lives Matter. This is in 2020. And it says here, you have been outspoken about the need for inclusivity and diversity in leadership roles in the publishing industry, as well as in books published. I love everything that you're doing there. Can you tell us a little bit about changing the story, please?
Yes. I mean, changing the story, that is basically our attempt to, as a business, more closely mirror the world that we live in and the readers of our books. Because publishing is not representative in so many respects. No. Either in terms of ethnic diversity, class, disabled representation. There's a huge number, women in senior leadership roles. There's a huge number of ways in which we're not as representative as we should be. Yep. It came about 6 years ago. A member of the team emailed me confidentially, and she was a young woman of color, and she told me about some experiences she'd had in the business that really took I thought were wholly unacceptable. Yeah. And were experiences I'd never had as a white man. Like things I would. And it really made me sort of think, we have to do something here. We have to try and change faster. I don't want anyone to be dealing with this. So I set up a group of people, and the idea really was that it's something that runs right through the company. It's one of our 4 strategic pillars. It's in everyone's appraisals and everything like that. There is the question, what did you do, to change the story this year? And that people are sort of financially bonused on it as well, because I think that's important. And it's important to me that it's something that at my level, it's absolutely central to what I want to do. And I'm driven by it, and the whole board is driven by it, and everyone throughout the organization, whatever level they are, it's a joint mission for all of us. Everyone's allowed to devote a significant amount of their time to it. We have different employee networks. We have 8 employee networks, dealing with different things. We've got a pride network, we've got a gender balance network, we've got a well-being network, we've got we've got Thrive, which is BIPOC, there's a and we've got over 1,000 people in the business, active members of those networks. Wow. So the idea is it's something that's neither top down nor grassroots, but everything. Right. So it's something that senior leadership are totally engaged with, and someone who arrives in the company as an intern is totally engaged with. That we're all in it. We're all in it together. I should say 5-6 years down the line, I still want us to be making faster progress, but we can see that we can see that there is a journey happening. We can see movement happening, that there are encouraging signs, but we're not where we need to be.
And would you say, I think this is fantastic. And one of the reasons I've traveled to Oman, we're in the Middle East at the moment. We just decided to take a couple of years out. I've tried to shift from non-fiction to fiction. I just for that challenge. Just why? Just because I wanted. My point is that coming to there are some places that are still so foreign that you feel like Far East, Middle East, like I could go to France, for example, and because we've all done a bit of French at school, on the whole, you can kind of pick up language, but some places are really strange. So when we came here to the Middle East, it was like, it's quite mind blowing. But I think it's so important to get into other people's communities and cultures, because there is no way until you've walked a mile in their shoes that you can really understand. And that, I think, is the issue with is why I think change is so slow. We don't spend enough time in other people's shoes. Like, we don't know what we don't know, do we? You have no idea that a person is going through that. Like, when I was teaching self-defense to some of my karate girls, when they got to a certain age, about 16, 17, they told me some of the things that they had to deal with in clubs and stuff, right? And I just had no idea that those sort of things went on. So you don't know till you don't know. And I think that's often why things happen so slowly. And it's just a matter of people not walking, long or quick enough in someone else's shoes.
Which I think is why it's so important that we are represented, representative, so that the right people are in the room, and it's not just a collection of sort of middle class white people speaking to each other.
Yeah.
Because then I think that's so important. Just an absolute variety of representation, backgrounds, and different sorts of perspectives and ideas, and diversity in all respects, diversity of thought as well.
Well, that's the other thing. Kicking back to kind of we mentioned at the top of the show, creativity. That as for many different, as well as kind of, a cynic would go, oh, it meets the kind of diverse classifications. But actually, from a humanity point of view, that amount of different points of view leads to fantastic creativity.
Well, also, I completely agree. And also, all the neuroscience says that if you're a group of people who've grown up with a similar experience, you will take shortcuts when you communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And actually, the act of not taking shortcuts and having to sort of explain, well, this is why this works. That in itself leads to better conversations and more challenge and leads to better business outcomes. There was a really good Harvard Business Review.
Did I read a lot
study
about
on it.
Black box thinking? Maybe by
Matthew Said.
Matthew Said, absolutely love that. But that sort of thing that people will just kind of keep making. I mean, they know what they know, they don't know what they don't know, and just keep making those kind of those same decisions, and not meaning to be prejudiced, racist, discriminatory, not actually meaning, just not realizing that's what's going on, because that doesn't happen in their 9 to 5. You've got to see outside the box, right? Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I want to, because I'm aware of time, so I want to make sure a lot of listeners kind of listening, really, we're listening to people who are where they want to be, as in doing work that they love and being successful at it. So I want to kind of steal some of your wisdom for these kind of people who want to be where you are, really, whether it's in publishing or whatever they're doing. So I want your thoughts about this. People who lead stifled lives, right? Why do you think that happened? Why do people get stuck in a rut and not follow or pursue their dreams?
Why do people get stuck in a rut and they don't pursue their dreams? I mean, in a sense, I feel I'm very, very lucky, because my dream, my dream was working in books, and that has turned out to be a very rewarding thing. I've seen friends who I think sometimes people get stifled because they've listened to other people too much.
Right.
I think sometimes society tells you need to pursue this sort of career, or a careers advisor, or a boss, or a family member. I think sometimes parents can have a very, very big impact on their children's lives, and their choice of careers in all sorts of ways, many years, after they've ever said anything. So I think people can sometimes be stifled because they listen to other people, and they haven't listened to their own gut. So I don't think it's always. I mean, for me, it's been sort of serendipitous. I never went into publishing to make money. I never went into it to be entrepreneurial. I never went into it for those reasons. I happily, found that I was in tune with those, the entrepreneurial side of it. Yeah. So, I think I would encourage people to sort of listen to try to get into that practice of listening to your gut a bit, and what we were discussing earlier about the money following that.
Do you, when you listen to your intuition, do you, because I know people feel it differently, do you actually feel it as a physical thing, or do you hear, I know this sounds a weird thing to be on a podcast talk about. So for example, my wife hears it as definite voices in her head. She'll ask a question and there will be an answer, right? Where I have much more of a, if it feels like I'm trying to hold up the world with my fingertips, and I'm working too hard, it's often wrong. If it flows and it's effortless, it's right. How do you feel? Where do you feel it in you?
I feel it in my mood.
Okay.
So, and I guess in things like sleep and hunger as well. So I'll give you an example. The other day, I woke up at 4:30 a.m. I normally sleep well. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. I couldn't get back to sleep.
Yeah.
And I noticed from that there is a reason. There is something why I cannot get back to sleep. There's something, and for me, actually, when I need to solve something or when there's something that's unresolved, then I notice. And I didn't know what the thing was actually.
Yeah.
And then over the next few days, I was like, this is the thing. That's why. And it wasn't like I woke at 4:30 thinking about this thing.
No,
I just woke you. Yeah. Something woke me, and then over the next few days, like, what is this thing? What is this thing? I feel upset, I feel angry, like I woke up at 4:30, what's going on, like something, and then I was like, right, this is the business issue, and then I was like, okay, and then what am I going to do about it? And then that sort of came to me, and then instantly I was like, I had a beautiful night's sleep, like I didn't feel
my time, and it's always this when I have that going on, that kind of unsaid issue which hasn't quite served, this is absolutely on the money. 2:24. It's always it's the weirdest thing, right? Because I'm the same. I can go to sleep. I'll be absolutely 10 minutes, not even 10 minutes, 15 seconds if I do the corpse, the corpse meditation, and I'm out of there snoring, right? Boom. But if it's going to be one of those, it's 2:24. I get up like clockwork, and then again, I not necessarily sure of what it is. Here's the thing. Let me ask you about this then. Grasping and letting go. We need a certain amount of amoebic movement, to kind of reproduce and move forward, But at which point do we? Because you've used the term, and I love the word. I use it all the time. Serendipity 3 times. There's a degree of kind of letting go and trusting whatever you trust. I'm a massive believer in that. But that fine line between grasping, going, pushing, sitting down and doing the hard hours, which have to be done right, and letting go. What's your view on that? When do you stop flogging a dead horse, if you like? When is the horse definitely dead?
What, in terms of changing direction on something?
Yeah, or when you just kind of, like, even with that, for that idea, if you're not sure what the problem is, for example, when do you just go, it'll come, I'll work it out? Or when do you just have to go, no, I have to study, I have to go online, whatever it may be? Where is the balance for you?
I think I find in my head is like things happen quite quickly.
Right.
So for me, I'm no good actually if I'm dwelling on something for like I'll often come like the answer will come or it won't come.
Okay.
I'm not someone who can sort of just quietly dwell on something. Like it will obsess me for a short period of time. And then I will move on. Then I will move on.
Yeah.
And it won't do any good. And sometimes people have said to me something like, "Oh, do you want to dwell on this some more, or let's have some more conversations, or let's have another meeting to discuss this, or maybe your view on that will sort of change." And I've tried that before, and it's never sort of beneficial for me. Yeah. So I've learnt now to like, right, I do this thing, and I'm all in it. I sort of see my style is I'm all in something. I'm totally obsessed by it. I'm working it out, and then I move on, and then I'm doing something else.
Amazing.
I think that's what works for me.
Yeah. And actually, that was quite on show. I'm the same. I'm all in. I mean, I'm also a little bit bull in a china shop. I'm going to do it. It sometimes hurts people around me, not on purpose, just because they get caught. They get caught in the falling china as I commit to it. But I could see that in our email stuff. I'd messaged you, asked you, yes, dates in 3 emails, which took about 7 minutes. This was set up, and then of course the details are done through kind of
And it wouldn't have, and I know myself now, it wouldn't have benefited me to sit on it and think, do I want to do Matt's podcast or whatever? I thought like, well, I like the sound of you. I like our crosswords. So yes, let's do it. I like doing, I like this, I like your energy. I like doing, so let's do it. Like sort of, it wouldn't have helped me or you for me to, I don't know, wait 48 hours.
No, exactly. But you see that a lot, right? And I get that from not even, I mean, of course you're a very successsul guy, but I get from real little players. Oh, let me think about it for a week. I'm like, it's a conversation. If you think about it for a week, I've moved on. And I'm talking people who there isn't a range of importance, but you see what I'm saying. Some people who probably don't need to be thinking about it for a week. All right, listen, last couple of things then. I could speak to you forever. All of my life depends on this. In the back of my mind, I'm like, would I have coffee with this person? Yes. So where are you in London?
Yeah.
All right, if I ever get back, I'm coming over for coffee.
Yeah, come and have a coffee.
Like it or not. Here's plans. What are your plans for the future? They can be business or they can be, I'm just fascinated with you actually, to be honest. They could either be business plans, future plans. What's in the future for you?
Two things are in my head. And one of them is about, I think we're at a really interesting moment in terms of publishing and what is publishing. We just bought a stationery company that does these beautiful notebooks called Paper Blanks.
Don't even get me started on stationery. If I had money to burn, it would be on stationery. Who doesn't love stationery?
They're beautiful. I'm becoming obsessed by it. And the founder owner, this guy Vic Marks, he said to me, you publish books and we publish stationery, and it's like it's publishing. So and we also now publish gifts. We bought a company called Lawrence King that publishes amazing card games, jigsaw puzzles, whatever. So what's really on my mind, and we're reaching so many new people through audio as well. Audio books become bigger and bigger and bigger, and podcasts we're doing. So in my mind, two things. What first is like the breadth of publishing and what publishing can be, that books are obviously at the heart of it, but there's so many other ways we can be a publisher and we can reach people and change their lives. So that's one thing. The other thing that's very much on my mind is which I put as like the consumers of the future. Kind of I'm fascinated by, say at the moment in book publishing, there's TikTok is driving a lot of book sales. There's a lot of sort of 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are doing these amazing, passionate TikTok videos, and it's driving a whole new generation of book lovers. I'm really, really interested in, because I think we are in the middle of this digital revolution, a cultural revolution.
Yes.
What are the consumers of the future going to want? What are they going to want to read? What are they going to want to consume? Kind of. So in terms of what's on my mind, the plans. My plans are really understanding those people better, the consumers of the future, and also understanding for you or me as like sort of middle-aged people, what are we going to be doing in 5 years' time? What are we going to be doing 10 years' time? What are we going to want? So
it's interesting.
Consumers of the future, and then how broad we can be as a publisher.
And you see that, don't you? You see the whole shift. I'm not on TikTok mainly because I can't do the flossing thing. I look like my dad.
I'm not.
I look like my dad. My wife likes me. I'm like, okay, I'm not going. But mainly because I can't do any of the dozens. But also, you see it in Reels and all the short stuff. And when YouTube, one of my friends works, she's quite high up in YouTube. Anyway, they were talking about how the shift is towards that short stuff, right? Because it catches. However, and I have a little bit of a problem with this, and this kind of goes in with meditation, right? Is that the short burst stuff is one thing, and I agree, because I enjoy doing it too. My Instagram account is all sorts of little bits. However, at some point, to go deep, you just have to sit for 30, 40 minutes, either in meditation or in prayer, whatever. That's that's a secular comment, a practice rather than a religious comment, or get deep into a good book. Superficial will only be a certain level. I hope. And I really hope that still the kind of speed generations, was it Generation Z onwards, the speed generations will at some point still sit down and read, maybe not 200,000 words, but a good 65 to 75,000 words, fingers crossed, eh?
But based on the evidence so far, that is absolutely the case.
Oh, really? Is it?
Yeah, that there is. We're seeing enormous sales of books to teenagers, and physical books as well, not audio books, not ebooks, physical books.
Yeah.
So and the way they're devouring long form content is really heartening.
Yeah.
And I think we're probably seeing. I think for our generation, like, books are a utility, like that's how you get. And I think for that generation, it's like much more of a sort of exciting sort of way of combating digital fatigue or whatever. It's like it fulfills a different role, but they're really into it from what
almost
what
like how cool would it be if it did it? I do things come, and certainly from a Buddhist perspective, full circle. So we get back to kind of Dickensian shopping for, waiting outside a bookshop for that kind of book. Maybe it could come back to that. Maybe it being a real luxury and a treat. We've started to really appreciate books again.
Yeah,
that would be quite a turn. Wow.
I really think so. Oh, and also, I mean, book sales are higher than they've ever been. So there's a really
hard book copies as well as all the other stuff.
Yeah. And I think with the pandemic, with all the obviously horrific things about it, one positive thing, obviously for us, was that people rediscovered their love of reading. Yeah. People who hadn't read before started reading. People who'd given up reading started it. It was people realised, wow, actually, this is something, and I think it really helped. We've had some amazing, moving emails from people saying, there was a nurse who wrote to one of our novelists saying, your books helped get me through these awful times, like these like it was. They gave me so much solace and like sort of like escape and kind of, I think, and which you can't necessarily get from a Netflix series or a YouTube video or whatever.
That is, another time we'll chat about, because I love the whole symbol. I love storycraft, the whole concept, and you'll know this studying English, but the whole idea of how it affects us, the Joseph Campbell stuff, and how it affects us psychologically, how it's more than a story. It's more than a whodunit. It gets to us. It gets deep into us. It is a type of, I think reading is a type of religion. I will be extreme enough to say that in a spiritual thing,
I completely agree. I agree. I think it fulfills a deep spiritual need.
Yeah. All right. Last question, then I'm going to let you go. One, I ask every guest this. It's an impossible question, but just do your best. One bit of advice. You clearly love what you do, successful doing it. Other people want to do the same. What bit of wisdom, one nugget that people wander away from this podcast going, oh, that guy David said this. One bit of nugget of advice that will stick in our heads like a mind worm.
This is a piece of advice. I did a business course a few years ago, and this brilliant tutor called Bruce Craven gave me this piece of advice, and I will pass it on because it's been so helpful to me, which is basically be a player, not a victim. And in any situation, and I find myself doing this to myself all the time, you have a choice. You can say, God, the world did this awful thing to me today, or that person at work, was really terrible to me, or whatever. And just to try as quickly as you can to flip yourself. No, that's a victim. Like, what am I going to be a player? What am I going to do? If that person did that thing, right, am I going to find a different job? Am I going to have a conversation with that person? I go like sort of to be active rather than passive, but be a player, not a victim. Like, it never fails me, I think, as a piece of advice whenever I'm struggling with something or going through something. Whenever I get into player mode, I find it very helpful.
I knew I was going to like this episode, but that was genius. We need to get you out of the corporate space and into the book world. I'm inspired. David, I loved every second of that. For you guys who are listening, of course, we do this podcast to help you. I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed that. And for all of you, as ever, I say this every single episode, please take a moment to share this. Not because I need my platform built, all right? There's no saving me, but mainly because there is someone that will benefit from what David and I have spoken about today. So please share, take a moment to comment. And as ever, if you have people in your life that you love, kiss them and tell them. And I will see you next time on the Buddhist Millionaire Podcast. Lots of love. Bye.